But qualifying has finished. So, Dom, why don't you want to take us through the driver lineup, what we have going on so far?
Yes, so the driver lineup on the wall telemetry has just updated. So we've lost all of our qualifying times, but it was so
So, actually, I think I've just managed to get it up, Dom. Take over from me at any point. So, first up, we in first place in the Bentley Continental, representing Team 1 Pro, we have Oscar Sandberg, who's managed to just out-qualify Grant Willamot, who, from last time, that is the top 3, actually, is how the standings finished in round 5. So Sandberg, Willamot and Vyrick. Wondering if they'll be able to finish in a slightly different order this time. 4th place, Jelani Patterson in the Hurricane GT3. In 5th place, Olivier in the Hurricane GT3. As then in 6th place, Daniel Christo in his newly acquired McLaren 720S. 7th place, Chris Corbin, the BMW M6, alongside Omar Badou. And then followed by AJ Jones in 9th place. There's a gaggle of Aston Martins here. Badou, Jones, Jamal Badou and Havard Rolfson, all in the Aston Martin, 8th through 11th. Then 12th place, Yearwood in his Continental. And then Charlie Martin again in her Continental, the highest place amateur driver in the lineup today. 14th place, Derek Rudder, the last of the GT3 groups. I'm sure he'll be looking to make a comeback through the ranks. So, Dom, who do we have for the GT4s?
in GT4 is out front. We've got Stavros Konstantinidis in the GT4 spec Aston Martin Vantage. He's been showing some really good promise during qualifying, about half a second ahead of the BMW driver Heath. Then the next row is followed by Io and Sonisia. They're using the GT4 version of the Mercedes, and it looks like the Porsche Cayman. Then we've got Addison and May, some more American drivers joining the CSM group. Good to have you all on board with us. Brenda May driving for Stargirl Racing, who is now a silver ranked driver, so good to have her in the runnings. And then bringing it back is Javon Codrington, who is new to the CSM group, but all in all having fun also in a GT4 Cayman.
Perfect. So there you have it. There is the grid. As we just wait for the drivers to finish their setups, the timer ticks down. But Dom, Barcelona, you've been around the circuit a couple of times in various sims. What's your take on it?
It's interesting with this setup of racing here run by CSM. It's not necessarily a sprint race, as they have a mandatory pit stop around about the half-hour mark to complete. And as seen back in round 2 at Kyalami, some of the drivers begin to come into play on the second stint after the pit window, particularly the Apex Fever drivers of Jeremy Gonzalez, who isn't here today, and Chris Corbin. They made some really strong strides at Kyalami in the latter half of the race, so look for the front engine cars to start to make their ground up on the mid-engine boys. And Turn 1 have made a really strong setup for their Bentley Continentals all season long, and they will be ones to hopefully make a break. But as said in the driver's briefing, Turn 1 and 2 is going to be very tight through there. People will be tempting to go 3 wide, and 3 into 1 just does not go, as we both know, Chris.
Of course not. No, Turn 1 is going to be a vital point on the first lap. There was a note in the driver's briefing to take extra care going into Turn 1. It can get quite narrow through the chicane there. But as the drivers go through their warm-up lap, we will be able to see what the track looks like as they make their way around, get some heat into the tyres, into the car, into the brakes. Hopefully we won't have a repeat of the Formula 1 today. If any of you saw that, I won't spoil it, but the outlap was probably one of the most entertaining bits of the race. Hopefully we won't have any of those dramas today.
Other thing to watch out for the drivers today, track limit warnings will be in place on the exit of turn 3 and also on the exit of, looks like, turn 9, cut through that is used for the MotoGP circuit. So that will be one to watch. And then into the hairpin at the end of that long straight going into 10. So that section, that complex will be, the drivers will be tempted to run just a little bit wide to get extra time and extra life out of the tires, but will not be wanting to push the envelope too much for the stewards.
No, of course not. There are a lot of flat curbs here at Catalonia, so it's all very tempting to try and use as much of them as you can. There are a couple of yellow sausage curbs dotted around the place, one notable one on the exit of turn 8 and the inside of the final complex, the last chicane. Always some big sausage curbs there that can launch the car, unsettle it, spin it round. We'll see that when the drivers go past. But other than that, Catalonia, generally quite a nice circuit. It is suited to GT3s, while it is an aero-dependent track. Mixture of nice fast corners going to some heavy braking zones. Tests all manner of cars. Good one. Usually end up with a nice spread through the field of cars performing well in different areas. Interesting to see that all the Aston Martins have decided to have a party in the middle of the pack. I will be interested to see how they manage to spread themselves out. Grant Willamot being the one to stand out there in second place.
Sector 3 seems to favour the mid-engine cars, as Grant Willamot was only quicker in Sector 3 against Sandberg up front, even despite them being 200ths apart. So watch for the mid-engine cars to slingshot off the last chicane onto the start-finish straight to get the run into turn 1.
That is a very good point. So that would be the Lamborghini Huracans and the two McLarens. We have the GT3s. So the GT4s, we have the luxury of 3 Caymans rear-engine cars to bless us with their presence there. So as the drivers line up 2 by 2 coming through the chicane, just about to round the final corner, we will stick with the front of the pack. Hopefully the helicam will give us a good view going down into turn 1. Drivers around the final corner. You've got to wait till the lights go green and then they'll be underway as they approach the line. And then round 6, the CSM ACC Championship will be underway.
Green light, go, go, go.
And the green light is gone. Away we go. The GT3s try to break away from the GT4s as quickly as possible. Coming down into turn 1. There's going nearly 3 abreast. In fact, 2 Aston Martins. Olivier has managed to get a jump on Willamot. He's got a better start coming down to turn 1. And then Sandberg actually runs a bit wide there, perhaps because of the opportunity to Weirich. There's contact between Weirich, Sandberg, and I think Olivier as well. Olivier's managed to get the jump round turn 3. This is a great start. Weirich has dropped back to easily P9 or 10, but they all, for the rest of the pack, seem to make it through rather without any calamities there. That seemed to be a good start.
Has had issues on the restart on most of the rounds so far.
In fact, there's a yellow flag races up. There's Damien Yearwood is round at turn 4. He's managed to get himself underway again. He might have been suffered in with some contact there. But other than that, the rest of the field seems to have got away relatively unscathed. Sorry to interrupt you there, Dom.
Just refreshing the timesheets here.
I think number 13 is round as well. That is the Weirich. Weirich is round again. Number 13. He's still stationary. I don't know whether he's had a serious.
And if he's had a collision with someone potentially.
That looks like potential serious damage. He is still not moving. Back in the first half of the lap, just crawling his way through. I don't know whether that is some serious damage on the car. I hope not. But
wonder if that is a DNF.
He has managed, through the magic of sim racing, teleported back to the pits. There is more contact involving the number 762 and 84 cars. That's Omar Badu and Derek Rudder. They've had a coming together. So it's all go on this first lap. But I'm afraid to say Weirich is in the pits. Whether he will make a return once he has had the repairs done, I hope he does make a return. But it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. So a very interesting first lap there, Dom.
However, interesting, Sandberg having a very slow set to one, despite us being 3/10 ahead of Dominic Oliver in the Vinci run. Willemot still holding on to a podium at the moment.
Yeah, it's all very tight between the top three. In fact, there is only 1.5 seconds separating the top four. Excuse me, and then not many further back. The GT3s that were caught up in a few of those incidents at the start now starting to make their way past the GT4s again. In terms of the GT4s, we've still got Kirk Heath out front. Well, he has actually managed to gain his place on Konstantinidis, who led the charge for the GT4s. But isn't there Damien Yearwood, Derek Rudder, Omar Badou start to make their way back through.
The top two in the GT4s are just beginning to check out from Neil Addison at the moment. So look for those two to have a race-long battle, or at least a first stint battle, to the pit stop window, and it's basically who will be brave enough to make the jump first.
This will be very entertaining to see. Just stick with Kirk Heath and Konstantinidis. Konstantinidis right under his rear wing in that Aston Martin, just poking his nose in where Heath perhaps just doesn't want it quite yet. Just making himself known, making himself big in those BMW mirrors.
Look how high the curbs are. These GT4 cars, they can definitely handle the abuse of these sausage curbs here at the Barcelona circuit, but just look how much it unsettles the car riding over them.
I know, it's the curbs here, as we said, the build-up is, those curbs are quite big. But the GT4 was obviously slightly more ride height, slightly softer cars. They can handle it better than the GT3s. In fact, I believe there were some yellow flags down at turn 1 involving the number 9, Olivier. Yep, he has dropped to the back of that pack. And I believe another car was caught up in that. Didn't manage to quite to see who, but Olivier's dropped to the back, so he's clearly had an incident. I believe that was with Grant Willemot as well. Yes, he's dropped back to 8th place. So that would have been a coming together, someone going for the overtake, not quite making it stick, and they would have had contact and spun themselves round. So the lead as it stands, 2.5 laps in, as they just go around turn 9. Oscar Sandberg leading the way from Jelani Patterson, and then Chris Corbin in 3rd place, but he's got Daniel Christo hot on his tails, only 2 tenths behind. In fact, not much splits those 3 drivers at all. Coming down into turn 10, the tight hairpin, no moves made. He's turning into
Christo
very
actually 2 tenths quicker on that last lap as well. So that is going to be very interesting between the mid-engined McLaren and the front-engined BMW. Chris Corbin is no stranger to being on the podium, as he took a podium on the first round here.
Exactly, very good point. He's going to be wanting to get to the front as quickly as possible.
He's not going to have the support of his teammate Jeremy Gonzalez this weekend, so he's driving completely solo.
Actually, in fact, Christo now making a move on Chris Corbin down into turn 1. He's got the inside, but as he managed to not overshoot, he manages to make the lunge in front of Corbin, and Corbin just succeeds the place. He just wants to do some damage limitation now. AJ Jones is behind him, going round turn 3 right now. But that was a great move from Christo, easily done. Put the car where it needed to be, got on the brakes at the right time, and made the pass stick. That was a very textbook move there. So now Chris Corbin, he's got to keep an eye out for Jones behind him. He will try and hound him, but he doesn't want to lose too much time to Christo. But if Christo is on a mad one, if he's feeling like hot stuff, he'll be trying to break away as quickly as possible. As we look further back through the pack, Grant Willemot just trying to get back to where I'm sure he'll feel he deserves to be. At the front, currently sitting in 7th place after a tangle with Olivier at the first turn on lap 2. And now there is Damien Yearwood and Omar Badou having a slight battle at the back of the GT3 pack. Just coming up to turn 9. In fact, Damien Yearwood just running wide. Badou managed to get the cut on him. The switchback going through turn 9 right now. That was a Badou will have that all day. I'm sure Damien Yearwood will not be happy with that though. Just a sign of track limits there on that corner, Dom. If you run wide, you do risk hitting the gravel and just losing all momentum.
One thing to note, Oscar Sandberg has already checked out, already into the 1 minute 44.6, closely followed by Daniel Cristo, who's also done 1 minute 44.6, fastest lap of the race as well. And there's also points for fastest lap going towards the championship, help keep championship contenders alive. So Daniel Cristo currently the fastest person on track, sitting in third, hunting down Lenny Patterson.
Yes, he currently has a. You say it was a gap of 1.7 seconds currently. The gap between Patterson and Sandberg just over 3 seconds. So it'll be interesting to see how the gaps progress over the next lap or two. Cristo has managed to gap Corbin by about 1.5 seconons. And the field just starting to spread itself out a little bit. Drivers getting into their grooves. I think the battles have somewhat subsided. The closest pair on track right now, looking at my timings, it's the cars of Hamid Rollerson and Grant Willamot, the 18 and 222 Aston Martins. They are split by just under, I should say, 0.8 of a second, just coming down into the tight hairpin, turn 10. Grant Willamot deciding to stick behind. The Astons, of course, the same car. Be interesting to see setup differences, where there's less or more wing, perhaps one has better turning, whether they'll try and gauge each other up to see where a move can be made. Moving further back down the grid, just going down to the GT4s. Kirk Heath has managed to slightly pull away from Konstantinidis. The early stage battle between those two has subsided slightly. And we've got Dami Ayo in his AMG GT4. He's got a track to himself, bit of clean air. Currently sitting pretty in P3 in the GT4s. But also what might be turning into a spicy competition is the battle between the 335 of May and I believe that is the 531. Nope, I am wrong. The 97 of Addison in Porsche and BMW respectively. In fact, May just running wide in her Cayman, running very wide, allowing Addison to just sneak through, but she's got to do some damage limitation now and not let Corrington pass. In fact, I think she decides not to do an unsafe rejoin and just thinks better of it. Just tuck back in behind, get back into the river. You don't want to ruin someone else's race as well by having a slightly mistimed rejoin. So well done there from May. She did the right thing.
The GT4 grid from just behind Ayo back to the back of the grid are all on the same second, furthermore about 1/10 of a second apart. All having very, very different sector times, but only about 1/10 of a second apart. So that is very, very close. Ayo currently on the fastest lap of the race for the GT4s with a 55.4, although being behind Kirk Heath, so Ayo is getting the move on.
What's the disparity currently between the GT3s and GT4s? What are the lap time differences looking like, Dom?
The top lap times in the GT4 class are around the mid 155s, whereas the middle pack of the GT3s are around the 145s. A couple of the front runners dipping into the 44s just slightly. So maybe picking up a toll, helping to get that dip into 44s. Currently only one of the drivers is in the 44s at the moment. That is Daniel Cristo, third.
So he's still the quickest on track.
But it seems to be about to 10 seconds difference between the GT3s and GT4s on the current fuel load and current tyre model as well.
So, of course, mentioning tyres, we should mention that there is a mandatory pit stop in this race, as there has been in the series the whole time. Nothing has changed. So in this race there is one mandatory pit stop in which you have to change tyres, but there is no need to refuel, so it is likely that the drivers will have taken the correct amount of fuel to see them through the race from the start, though some might try and underfuel it and see if they can perhaps try some fuel saving through the race. But the biggest competition pit stops will be the tyres. Who do you think so far, Dom, is starting to think about their strategy, perhaps wondering about the undercut or the overcut?
I think Jelani Patterson is going to be a dark horse, because watching him and Oliver back at round 2 in Kyalami, they were the first to make the move to take the fight to the turn 1 team and almost came away with it. Oliver made a move on Sandberg at the time for the lead, and Sandberg got him back on the following corner. So the Vinci team, Jelani Patterson, being the lead car, will potentially take some orders between himself and Oliver on what the strategy will be, but they will be the dark horses. Also, Daniel Christo is a sole competitor in the Roll Autosports team, so he will have to do all of the strategy call himself. And in an ideal world, typical Formula 1 strategy, do whatever the guy in front doesn't do. So that will be the prime battle between second and third, those two. And I imagine both of them will be looking to take the undercut to turn 1 driver Sandberg.
So there is obviously a good battle just emerging between Christo and Patterson. There are a couple emerging to the track. Some pace has been found by a couple of the drivers, so we're currently looking at a fight between Patterson and Christo. Christo might coming into turn 10. Just think about a lunge.
Christo is so composed on braking. Look at the body language of that car. So flat. Very, very patient on the throttle on the exit of the corner as well. Danny Patterson's going to have his work cut out for him.
The amount he makes up on the brakes going into the hairpin, you're totally right, Dom. The McLaren and Christo are a devil on the brakes. The Hurricane just can't match it. But then coming out the corners, the Hurricane just seemed to have a bit more go. Just starting to pull away slightly, but there is a bit of toing and froing throughout the lap where cars are stronger. But they are just maintaining the gap to Sandberg. I'm wondering whether this is a slight decision from Christo not to make a move, if that means that by working together, the unspoken rule of just don't overtake me and we can catch the guy in front. In the karting days, you'd give the guy the finger, tap the helmet, be on your way. Can't quite do that in the GT3s. But it'll be interesting to see how they get on. The gap has come down to 2.6 seconds, as my timing screen last updated. As they go round turn 3. It's just started to come up on the back of the GT4s. So they'll be coming up to lap May and Codrington, who are having a good scrap as well. They are quite close together on track. 2 Porsche Caymans, the number 999 of Codrington and the 335 of May. It's a good amount. Good amount of toing and froing. Moving further up the GT4 grid to Heath and Constantinidis. In fact, Constantinidis has just managed to get past Heath. I believe Heath ran wide at turn 10. This pair have been quite close on the timing screens for the past couple of laps. Constantinidis did drop off a little bit, but he seems to have pulled it back to Heath, whether Heath made a couple of mistakes or Constantinidis just simply put his foot down. He thought he needed to go a little faster. Not too sure, but for the lead of the GT4, Constantinidis is now in front. Do you think he'll be able to keep hold of that, Dom? Do you think Heath will bring it back?
That is very, very interesting. The two cars are very, very similarly balanced. Constantinidis just dipping into the 1 minute 53s now. 1 minute 53.8 on the last time round. A clean sweep of all the sectors for him. So he's looking very, very comfortable in the Aston. Probably beginning to burn off some fuel load. Maybe carrying a little bit less fuel than Kurt Heath. Being able to put about a second on him on that last lap. So I get the feeling that this isn't over though, Chris.
Oh no, I reckon when the pit stops come into play, when the pit window opens in 3 minutes and 48 seconds time, opens at the 40-minute mark, is where things will start to spice up. So, while that battle seems to have died down, we're just going to jump towards the back of the GT3 pack to AJ Jones, Jamal Badou and Dominic Olivier. They are together on track, just coming out of turn 4. 2 Aston Martins and the Hurricane. Just trying to see who is looking the quickest out of these three. Badou just closing a little bit on Jones on the brakes. Jones ran a little bit wide onto the marbles at the exit turn 3. So perhaps Badou just trying to put the pressure on, just trying to force him into a mistake. They're coming up on traffic of the GT4s. So interesting to see if one of them gets held up, whether they play a part in GT3 standings. Ooh, Badou just having to get hard on the brakes there. Then he goes into the back of AJ Jones, which thinks he can try it round the outside. In fact, Olivier's just had a jump in as well. He's managed to overtake Badou. That was a very opportunistic move there from Olivier, wasn't it, Dom?
Very, very opportunistic. Everyone's getting a bit dicey now. I mean, they need not get impatient. There's still trap limits to think about, and also that all-important undercut the turn 1 drivers. They can't afford to let Sandberg get away with this.
Absolutely not. So, speaking of Sandberg, Sandberg is coming into the pits. He is blinked first, 2 minutes before the pit window, so he thinks it's time to get out of the way. Maybe he thought the GT4s were just going to start holding him up, so he thought dive in, get the pit stop done nice and early. So that has managed to let Patterson and Christo scarper away.
Very uncharacteristic of turn 1, because usually they are one of the last to make the move.
They are.
The top 2 on the also very, very unusual from them, but maybe they feel that the threat from Patterson and Christo are that much greater than in previous rounds.
That is a very interesting point, because the last round, round 5, Sandberg was pretty much on his own the whole time. He had a race to himself. He just had to do, stay out, control the pace of the race, but under the pressure of Patterson and Christo, thinking to try something a bit different.
Having some technical difficulties with the pit wall live telemetry, so I'm currently working blind at the moment.
In fact, I believe Oscar Sandberg disconnected. I don't wish to say that he has, but I believe Sandberg just disconnected. And so I also believe Damien Yearwood has disconnected as well. So we've had a couple of dropouts.
A couple of dropouts indeed. That is not going to be good for the championship for Sandberg or turn 1.
No, they now have no pro drivers in the fight. So this means that Delaney Patterson is our overall leader on the race. This is a big moment for him. And Christo as well, only a second behind. And Corbin just coming through in 3rd place as well. So that is how the top 3 currently stand. Whether it will finish that way, of course, we have 40 minutes left. Anything can happen. But as the pit window is about to open, let's just take you through the running order, just give you an update on how it's going. So we've got Delaney Patterson out front in his Huracan, quickly followed by Daniel Christo. 3rd place, we have Chris Corbin. It's a 3.5 second gap to Grant Willimot. But hot on the tails of him is Arvid Rolofsson, just about 2 seconds behind. The Aston Martin pair just starting to gap slightly. 6th place. In fact, AJ Jones just had an off. He's ended up in the gravel at turn 4. Backwards, he managed to keep it going. Luckily, hasn't got the car beached, but I wonder if there was some contact. He was trying to get past some GT4s, so I don't know whether he had some difficulty there. Perhaps one made an unexpected move, or he tried to throw it where it shouldn't have been thrown. That is calamitous for AJ Jones. Be making mistakes like that and have some dirty tyres for the next couple of laps. So he has dropped down the order quite considerably. So the 18 Rawson, Willimot, AJ has dropped down. So yeah, the number 9 car Olivier has moved up a place, as has Jamal Badou. So AJ Jones losing 2 places from that mistake there. That was quite costly for him. I believe it was just from a GT4 getting in the way, but I'm sure he'll have some words to say after the race. Whether we can speak to him or not, we can find out. But that has also moved Charlie Martin up a place as well. She has managed to overtake AJ as well, so the amateur driver up to 8th place. And then AJ currently sitting in 9th, just trying to pick his way through the BMW of Addison. But hot on his tail. In fact, AJ bails into the pit lane, and that allows Omar Badou to make his way past. So AJ is the first blink and get in the pits. So it'll be interesting to see now where the drivers start to react to that and think, do they start coming in, or do they leave it a bit longer? What do you expect, Dom?
I think it's going to be a complete toss-up at the moment, with the field spreading out so much. Everything is to play for. Just trying to do some quick maths at the moment. And as they stand with Jelani Patterson in the lead, that jumps him up from 6th to 3rd. Most importantly, ahead of Axel Svensson for the 3rd place spot, overtaking one of the Turn 1 Pro-Am drivers. So that is going to be a huge points haul for Vinci team.
It will, definitely. Axel Svensson has not been able to join us for the past couple of rounds, unfortunately. But as every round counts in this championship, it does pay to go to all of them. Actually, I believe I got that wrong. There is a drop round. So the lowest scoring round you get in the championship will be dropped just out of politeness. You might have had a disconnect or just perhaps something going wrong out of your control. Just limits the laws of chance in racing. Just makes things a bit friendlier for everyone involved. So moving then to the front of the GT4s. Currently have Konstantinidis in the lead, just coming down to turn 1. I believe it's lap 11 for Konstantinidis. Then Kurt Keith has dropped back quite considerably, about 10 seconds back from Konstantinidis. So when we're watching them 5 or so laps ago, they are right next to each other, but has dropped back considerably. And then we've got Michael Somniji, who has gone relatively unnoticed in this race so far by us. Currently sitting pretty in 3rd place, the GT4s, in his Cayman. But hot on the heels of him is Dami Ao.
What happened to Ao? Did he have a problem at some point? Because he was running very, very close to the front pair.
He was, wasn't he? That's a good point.
He had an off that we managed to miss somehow, but he was running. He was at one point the fastest of the GT4s before he managed to lose that position to Asia. So something must have happened to Ayo at some point during the change of camera angle.
Maybe. What if he was the car caught up in the incident with AJ Jones? Because they were on track near each other when AJ had a venture off into the gravel. So maybe Ayo was involved in that and pushed him back a bit. It's entirely possible.
Potentially, we'll need to check with the stewards by the end of the race. We'll have an update on that in due course.
And then moving back through the rest of the GT4 grid, we've got Javon Codrington and then May as well in the Cayman pair. Currently in the pits for the GT4s is Addison in his BMW. He is just getting moving as I say that. We've actually just jumped to the on-track battle between Rolfsson and Willemot. Grant Willemot just managed to make a pass on Rolfsson. It was he got before we got to turn 1. That is a good move from Grant. Managed to get it done before he even gets to the corner. He must have had a superb exit coming out of the last turn. Superior exit speed.
Has Rolfsson pitted yet? I get the feeling that he's running slightly out of sync with the rest of the grid at the moment.
I haven't seen Rolfsson in the pit yet, but it is actually entirely possible that he has. That yellow Aston Martin, I do believe I saw further up the field beforehand, or whether he's just had a slight drop of pace. Perhaps the tyres are starting to go. Because in fact, he's got to worry about Olivier as well. He is starting to catch. He's only 1.8 seconds behind. So maybe it's just Rolfsson is starting to struggle on those tyres. This is the point of the race where you do start to think about a pit stop. And the pit stop in Barcelona, Catalunya, is a long pit lane. Of course, it's a very long straight, so it's a very long time. You are only going 31 miles an hour. So starts just after the final turn, all the way down into turn 1. So you want to minimise pit stops, minimise any potential damage, any time spent in the pits, and just get away as quickly as possible. The gap just seems to be maintaining between the three of Willemot, Rolfsson, Olivier, but if anything, Olivier has maybe slightly caught Rolfsson, but not by a whole lot as they make their way down the main straight towards turn 1. And I can see the on-track battle heating up between Charlie Martin and Omar Badou. They come round the final turn. They are only separated by 5/10. Charlie Martin in her Bentley Nice, great big thing. You can't miss it on the track. Badou just tucking out of the slipstream. He's just trying to make himself known in the mirrors, perhaps just feigning a move. I'd be surprised if he went for it from that far back. In fact, he doesn't, so he just stays behind. No dramas going into turn 1 there. Barcelona can be known as a tricky track to overtake. Where do you think would be the best place to try something, Dom?
You'll need to get it all done on the chicane in order to set you up for turn 1. That's one of the prime spots. Depending on the setup of the drivers and the fuel loads and the tyre strength coming through turn 3, you could poke it down the inside of 4 at the end of sector 1. But as that corner tightens up on the apex and then opens up afterwards, it then leaves you on the outside. Prime spots are going to be turn 1 and then going into the hairpin down at 10. Those are probably the 2 best spots to overtake, or maybe potentially send one up the inside, true Daniel Ricciardo style.
Yeah, the last of the late breakers. Of course, while you're explaining that, we did see Martin and Badou go side by side through turns 5, 6 and 7. So
lots of respect between those two there. You don't see that very often in GT racing.
Not at all. Masterclass of respect and fair racing there. But that hasn't meant they've stopped racing each other altogether. They're still together coming into the last chicane. Badou is really hot on the brakes towards that Bentley every time. He's getting right under the rear wing. They both stay out. None of them have gone into the pits. Badou perhaps got a slightly superior exit over Charlie Martin there.
I must say that Charlie Martin competed in the Nürburgring 24 earlier up in the year, so she is experienced to having multiple cars, multi-class on track around her at the same time. So a lot of respect between Badou and Charlie Martin. You want to see more of that in future rounds to come.
Oh, most definitely. One for all. She gets very sideways just coming out of the first chicane. Manages to keep it together, very well held, but that has just given Badou a chance. He's going to try and shove it up the inside to turn 4. He is nearly alongside, but thinks better of it. Martin just comes across, but she has ran wide. The pressure's feeling the pressure, and that has managed to allow Badou to get through. So Badou just doing everything he had to do there, not forcing a move. He just waited for the pressure to get to Martin, and she just started to feel it, perhaps just looking maybe a bit too much in her mirrors. And Badou managed to slip through. I'm sure Martin will be hoping to get back on the tail of Badou as quickly as possible and perhaps do the same to him.
For the Bentleys down the start-finish straight, they have been quick in the speed traps all season long, so it's not over for Charlie Martin just yet.
Keep pushing.
Not at all, as we just reached the halfway mark in the race, 30 minutes through. While that was going on,
Chris Corbin seems to have got past. Chris Corbin seems to have gotten past Grant Wilmot.
And Patterson. Patterson's gone into the pits, that's fine. But he has, hasn't he? Daniel Christo, I think, has pitted as well amongst all that. So Corbin is currently leading the race.
Again, you remember what I said at the start of the race? The BMWs of the Apex Fever teams seem to come into play around the halfway mark as the fuel load's burning off and the tires start to come back to them. It happened in round 1, happened in round 2 at Kyalami, and it's happening here again at Barcelona. So perfectly timed from Chris Corbin.
Isn't it? So Chris Corbin, of course, was leading the special round 2-hour race we had at Bathurst, but unfortunately did suffer from a disconnect. So hopefully we won't be have the misfortune of seeing him disconnect from this race, as there is a yellow flag at turn 9. The number 97 I think was round and has in fact disconnected. So who was the number 97? That was Addison, the BMW M4 GT4 of Addison. So whether they've had some irreparable damage or simply the internet decided it had enough, which we don't know, might be able to find out some information as the race goes on. But 2 stop-go penalties of 30 seconds for the rear end of the GT4 field for May in Somnesia. Somnesia is in fact taking it now, I believe. Stop-go penalties, most commonly for speeding in the pit lane, but I believe you can also get them for serious track limits offences. So Somnisia has served his stop-go penalty of 30 seconds. He's coming back out onto the track now, but May still has hers to worry about, where she will probably take that during her pit stop. Moving further back up the field now, there is the trio of Wilmot, Olivier and Jamal Badou in the pits. All three are in at once, so it'll be interesting to see in what order they come out in. Olivier will probably come out in the lead, if my memory serves me correctly, as Grant Wilmot was the last to stop. And also the number 762 Aston Martin, Omar Badou, has come into the pits. So the potential front runners who are looking to catch up Rollison and Corbin all pitting at once. Be interesting to see where they all come out. That'll be one to watch towards the end of the race, Dom, don't you think?
Yeah, that'll be very, very interesting. The pace of the GT3s has suddenly just upped another notch all of a sudden. It's like they just flicked a switch and the cars have come alive.
Maybe it's these slightly lighter fuel roads and with some fresher tyres on the car as well. In fact, Dominic Olivier has got a stop-go penalty, 30 seconds, currently sitting in 5th place. That is the last thing he would have wanted. Most probably a bit late on the brakes coming to the pits, just slightly overdid it. A bit hot coming in. That is very unfortunate for him. It's not something you want to see as a driver. And as we've mentioned before in previous rounds, if you're sitting stationary for 30 seconds, you know about it. There is no escaping it.
That is an eternity of time. That's going to hand the championship back to the Apex Fever driver of Chris Corbin. Chris Corbin currently in 4th in the championship with 104. Is behind Axel Svensson, who is not in the event today, on 111. So with the points standings, that will move Chris Corbin up to 3rd, with Sandberg and Eric potentially not scoring today. Is a huge points haul again for Apex Fever. So again, this race is switching around leaders, just like the Formula 1 race that we had earlier today, isn't it, Chris?
That's a very good point. You just can't really tell who's going to come out on top. Rolfson is currently in the pits. He is just having his tyres changed and his makeup done. But Chris Corbin is still out. Where is he on
Daniel
track?
Christo is ahead of Jelani Patterson. I remember that was a very, very tight battle between the two, with Patterson being the lead car. Now that they have switched, it'll be interesting to see if the McLaren can then put some legs on the Huracan now that Christo is ahead. Christo did qualify ahead of Patterson today, don't forget.
That is a good point, but of course Patterson, before the pit stops, was ahead. He was leading the race before he decided to pit, so that is a very interesting turnaround there. Maybe one got stuck in traffic, the other just had some very good laps to put in. So Christo currently sitting in 2nd place. If the timing screens were to go that far back, of course, Corbin is yet to pit, so he is at least perhaps even a lap down. So once Corbin goes into the pits, we'll have a better idea of where he'll come out. It's difficult to say at this point, as Christo just comes up on some traffic ahead. I believe that is the GT4 of AO and the McLaren of Derek Rudder just running wide on the exit turn 10, but just gives him the room. Slotting in behind, just perhaps thinking he can try and learn a couple of things from his fellow McLaren. Just coming into the last part of the lap. So
is that a penalty as well for Omar Badou?
It is a penalty for Omar Badou. Well, good spot. A stop go of 30 seconds. So there have been no track limits warnings as such. That must be for speeding the pit lane again in his stop. And that's very unfortunate. The pit lane just catching out a few drivers here. That is the 4th stop go penalty we've had. Something I admittedly didn't consider, Dom, coming into this race, that the pit lane would catch so many drivers out.
It is a very, very long pit lane. Drivers may just get that slight bit anxious on the way in and just get caught out.
Yeah, the braking zone, if you ever watch some real life racing, coming into there, round the last turn, you're coming in quite hot and you've got a short dash on the brakes. It can catch a few drivers out. It's not the Easiest thing in the world to do.
It's also a very, very narrow pit entry on used tyres, so it's very, very awkward to get the car shut down in time before that white line where the speed measurements are taken from. So, very, very difficult indeed.
Yes, of course. So, in terms of on-track action right now, there's not a whole lot really. Everyone's sort of spread out. They've all taken a chill pill. They're all relaxing. As I believe I just saw someone obliterate some bollards. I think Omar Badou just ran a bit wide on turn 9 and just sent some bollards flying out of frustration. But if we just jump to the front, Chris Corbin, he is just coming up to turn 4. It'd be interesting to see if he decides to pit this lap. It's just coming to the end of the pit window, so I would expect he would come into the pits. He might try and run it out, but the rules of the series are you must pit during the pit window 4 tyres if you haven't done so already due to damage or for any other reason. So I fully expect Chris Corbin to come into the pits at the end of this lap, and it'll be interesting to see where Christo comes into amongst all this. Christo is just currently entering turn 3, sitting pretty in second place, with a comfortable 8-second gap to Patterson as well.
Speaking of tyres, Chris, the tyre model in this, as you yourself are also a user of the ACC sim, what are the tyre models like between the compounds? What do these drivers have to battle with today?
Well, luckily with ACC, the tyre compounds are dry and wet in all of its detail. So there is just the one standard endurance tyre in ACC. Luckily they have no compounds to worry about as such, but there are brake pads to worry about. You can change the brake pads. You do have different performance brake pads that last different lengths of races, so drivers would have thought about that as well. And of course the track temperature will play a part. The degradation, I nearly said that right, of the tyres as well. It's currently sitting at 24 degrees C. The in-game time is about 20 to 5 p.m. So not the hottest of the Spanish sun, just burning up the track and the tyres, but certainly something to watch out for. Interestingly enough, there is an update coming to ACC on the 18th in which the tyre model will change. They have made a tyre model update, so the next time this series comes around in round 7, we'll have something for the drivers to contend with. Perhaps the cars will act a little bit differently. So
Chris Corbin is coming into the pits.
Yeah,
so that timer is now beginning to tick between Corbin and Christo. Where will Corbin come out in terms of that pack of Christo, Patterson and Wilmot?
So
you're looking very, very racy indeed.
Christo has managed to jump Corbin in the pits. Christo is currently going round turn 5, but Corbin has just left the pit lane. In fact, Jelani Patterson has managed to jump Corbin as well, as has Grant Wilmot and Jamal Badou. So Corbin has in fact dropped down to 5th place, I believe. Or is Badou a lapped car? I expect Jamal. No, I'm chatting rubbish. Jamal Badou has managed to overtake Chris Corbin as well. So Chris Corbin has dropped from 1st to 5th place there. Perhaps staying out on those tyres was not the best course of action.
Car have the pace to come back in these final 20 minutes. It has had in the past, but I get the sense that a podium place for Chris Corbin and Apex Fever is just slightly out of his hands.
I'm getting that impression as well. He is currently 4 seconds behind Jamal Badou, who is then a further a certain amount of time, which the timing screens are not showing me. 17.5 seconds behind Grant Wilmot. Thank you for updating in good time. But I mean, Chris Corbin has just taken out a second out of Jamal Badou over half a lap or so. So Corbin is pushing like a madman to try and get back those podium positions.
That is the Apex way. That is very characteristic of Apex when Corbin and Gonzalez are on track. So it's spicing up.
This is
Definitely going to
very
be a fight for the third stop on the podium.
Yes, it certainly will. Currently occupied by Grant Willamot. He is 6.5 seconds behind Delaney Patterson. He's running relatively on his own, just coming up to a few back markers. He has the 84 of Derek Rudder to contend with, as well as the 38 and 531 cars of Kurt Keith and Mike Shamnesia, GT4. In fact, there's a little bit of disagreement there on track position between Shamnesia and Derek Rudder, but GT4's just playing a game of chess amongst themselves. The GT3's just trying to play checkers on top of them. Grant manages to make his way through unscathed. So that on-track battle currently happening between Shamnesia and Heath. In fact, it's not a battle at all, because Heath is a lap up, I believe. Am I right?
But this performance from...
Yes, I am right in saying that. Sorry, Dom.
This performance by Christo and Wilmot has blown the championship wide open. Obviously, they did not start the championship from round one, Wilmot being a recruit of the Turn 1 team and Daniel Christo being an independent. But those two, the pace they've been showing today, qualifying and in the race, they've blown the championship wide open.
This is a big move from Daniel Christo. Leading the race by 8 seconds currently to Delaney Patterson, as he just tries to navigate the GT4 of Constantinidis. So, Christo, with 15 minutes left, what are you thinking as a driver, Dom? You've got 15 minutes, you're in the lead of the race, Patterson is trying to get back at you. What are you thinking?
I think you just need to get your head down, stay out of trouble, make sure you clear the GT4s as safely as possible, but also pick your moments on where to clear them. And that's pretty much all you can do, not taking any risks. There's no point in going after fastest laps so late in the race. If the car comes back to you at the end and you've got the confidence to push, then so be it, but he does not want to take any unnecessary risk. We've seen that happen before at Kyalami, throwing it the run into the last corner. There's a very, very difficult off-camera right-hander with a massive sausage curb on the entry, and there's not much runoff. It's very easy to get caught out by that, and the curbs here at Barcelona are just massive, unlike any other circuit on the calendar.
Yeah, so that will be just basically see it through, get the job done, no dramas, go have a beer at the bar, and then call it a night.
So I also want to point out Delaney Patterson has it all to lose because he's higher up in the championship, and he and his partner Dominic are fighting as well for the team's championship. Although Oliver is not fighting up front at the front with them as he usually is, Patterson has it all to do, and he's the one with the big axe to grind if he doesn't get it pulled off, or if he somehow manages to win it. So everything is playing into the hands of Daniel Christo here today.
It certainly is, and what Christo will be hoping for as well. Grant Willamot is currently 5.5 seconds behind Patterson. Knowing Grant, he's going to be pushing as hard as possible to try and get second place off Patterson. So if that battle does start to form, of course that it falls into Christo's lap even more. He can just start to run away and increase his chances of a win here, because the gap between Christo and Patterson currently 8.7 seconds. The gap between Grant Willamot and Delaney Patterson 4.8 seconds. So it's really going to have to try hard here to try and push onto the back of Daniel Christo without letting Grant catch up even more. So this is going to be a very interesting end to the race. This battle for second place I can see heating up quite drastically. So as we look back,
Chris Corbin is reeling in Jamal Boudou. He's all over the back of him. So Chris Corbin is wrestling that BMW around.
Yeah, less than a second between them, just coming down into turn 10. Corbin probably too far back to make a move. Yep, he does not go for it. Sensible. But Chris Corbin we saw come out I thought rather surprisingly behind Jamal Badou. He had everything to do to try and make up the time. He's certainly managed to do that. Whether we can see Chris just start to overturn Jamal, coming into the final part of the lap through the chicane. Both get through relatively unscathed, no curbs taken by any of them. See who managed to get the better exit coming out the last turn. Corbin, of course, will have the toe of that Aston Martin. So just gaining slightly down the straight. Whether he decides to go for it into turn 1, wait and see. He's just perhaps just feigning a move, just having a look. But no, decides to stay behind and thinks better of it.
Chris has been very composed in the braking zone. He's been making up so much time on the braking, not necessarily cornering speed, but braking speed.
He's a hot one on the brakes, isn't he? The BMW is a very nicely balanced car. The Aston Martin is as well. They have strengths in different areas. The Aston Martin is slightly better off coming out the corners. BMW slightly hotter in. As we can see, it is hotting up between the pair now. Badou just running wide. They're side by side going into turn 7. Corbin has the inside. He'll probably keep it going in there. He does. He has managed to dispatch Badou brilliantly there, but Badou has not done there. He's going to try and come back for sure. He's trying to stick with Corbin going through turn 9. Very fast right hand with this slight lift, perhaps a slight dab of the brakes to ties the grade, chuck it in, full throttle halfway through the corner, come down the straight. Badou's not picking that up without a fight. He's trying to be as late in the brake spot. In fact, he overshoots on the brakes massively there. Badou just didn't quite have what he needed in the locker. He tried to take a leaf out of Chris Corbin's book and be late on the brakes, but it didn't quite work for him.
Chris Corbin should, in theory, pull away after having that very late pit stop anyway, just running that much fresher tyres. It was very late on the brakes from Jamal Badou though. He must have had it locked from the moment he applied the brakes in the braking zone, so unusual for them to get it so wrong on the braking, but it's not over yet. So easy to make a mistake around this circuit, as we all know.
Yes, and there's 10 minutes, just over 10 minutes left, so there is enough time for Corbin perhaps even to make a mistake, or even one of the boys in front, Willamot, Patterson, Christo. There is a chance that they could make a mistake as well. So if
down in the GT4 battle, Konstantinidis and Heath. Konstantinidis seems to have a massive lead.
Yeah, that has developed quite drastically over the race, in fact. Kirk Heath has dropped back by some margin to Konstantinidis.
Wonder if he may have had an issue in the pit stop, because there's no reports of any penalties being served by Heath, so where has the time all gone?
So, I mean, it's entirely possible. Konstantinidis is just very fast.
Magic Stavros.
Oh, I like that.
Magic Stavros. We'll definitely need to get a word from Stavros at the end. Hopefully we'll be able to get that to you, all the listeners out there watching on the stream.
Yeah, so make sure to stick around after the race. Myself and Mr. Dominic Linton will be asking the drivers some questions, just getting their opinions on the race. So make sure you stick around for that after the race. But for now, up in the lead, Daniel Christo, the gap sort of plateaued around the 8-second mark between him and Slaney Patterson. The number 99 McLaren just currently navigating. That is at the back marker of May. It is indeed. So getting around to her, not too many issues. Hopefully not losing too much time.
I reckon we've got about 4 laps remaining, maybe 5, but I reckon about 4 laps remaining. And that means Jelani Patterson is going to have to drop 2 seconds a lap in order to catch up to Christo. So I think, unless Christo drops it, I think that is GG to Daniel Christo. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to call it too soon, but looks like he's now settled into a good rhythm to take him home with that gap towing at the 8-second mark.
Very interesting to see if any drivers think they can go for the fastest lap. I'm just having a look through to see who has currently got the fastest lap. I believe it is a 1:44.5 for Grant Willimot. Yeah, he currently has the fastest lap. So
it would have been done
extra
before
point
the pit stop. That time would have been done before the pit stop, so... No, the Willimot...
44.145, my mistake, looking at last time.
44.1, that is a heck of... Oh, was that someone spinning not long ago?
That might have been. I did not quite see it. Could have missed it on the cameras.
Looks like one of the GT4s going around in the chicane. 1 minute 44.1 is very, very quick indeed. That's almost down to the qualifying pace. They were just into the 43s at the end of quali, so...
And that's with
to come alive now.
A considerable amount of fuel in the car as well. In the qualifying, they most likely would have had the tanks drained. So to see them come on that much is very impressive. In fact, Grant is just catching Delaney Patterson ever so slightly. The gap currently sitting at 4.2 seconds. He has 6 minutes to try and make up that time. Do maybe a couple of seconds a lap. Might see him through, but I think he's going to have to really pull something out of the bag to catch Patterson. He's kept 4 seconds over 6 minutes. Is a big ask. So currently on track, the closest pair. Well, I say closest. I'm looking at it right now of Patterson and Willimot. The field is relatively spread out. Of course, they will be overtaking and lapping each other, but there is not too much happening. If we jump to the 21 car of Charlie Martin, she has Omar Badou for company. Badou is a lap down, but Badou is all over the back of Charlie Martin, so I'm wondering whether Badou is just trying to unlap himself, as long as he doesn't do a Esteban Ocon in the process. It should be fine. We don't take out the car ahead. I remember you hurting quite a bit on that day, Dom, when that Verstappen Ocon incident.
Yes, that was very, very... that was a very interesting debate on drivers unlapping themselves and having more pace than the drivers fighting for podiums.
It's an interesting topic, because as a lapped driver, of course, if you're faster, you believe you should be in front, because then you won't interrupt their race anymore if you can just get ahead and pull away. But if the car in front doesn't yield, because of course they don't have to, as they are the car that's ahead, and you therefore have to force the overtake, the chances of collision just skyrocket exponentially. So it's an interesting one. Do you just sort of, start counting your chickens and just sit behind, or do you
There has
get on with it?
There has to be that respect, and as you mentioned earlier, Charlie Martin being one of those drivers that does drive with lots of respect, so there has to be ultimate faith in the person next to you, and likewise them having ultimate faith back. That doesn't always happen, as we all know, but here in CSM, driving etiquette has been very, very good so far for the season. We want to continue on that trade.
Yeah, I think that's a good point worth mentioning, actually, is that there has been the odd on track scrap, of course, as there is in all motor racing, but it's all friends at the end of the day. In fact, Badou just actually tried to make it round the outside of Martin. It just manages to hang it, just managing to avoid the gravel coming into turn 8. But Badou
very, very brave indeed.
That was a questionable move. That was Alex Albon-esque. I'm not sure I enjoyed that. I was wincing. I was waiting for something to go wrong. Thankfully, it didn't. But, yes, I completely lost my train of thought with what I was saying there. Clearly was not very interesting. I'm sorry for boring you all at home.
That's racing, mate. That is racing. Just about 3 minutes left to go. So I get the feeling it's going to be 2 more laps or 1 more lap on top of the one currently embarked on by the leader.
Yeah, so Christo, the leader, is just currently coming around the hairpin of turn 10. So coming towards the end of the lap. So 2 laps is what I would expect. I think 2 laps. I think you're right there, Dom. So the gap between Christo and Patterson is still staying at 6 seconds. So the fact Patterson has managed to close in ever so slightly, not quite enough though. And Grant Willamot has in fact closed on Patterson as well, but again not enough. Currently sitting at 3.7 seconds, the gap between those two. But Chris Corbin is still sitting 23 seconds behind Willamot, so Corbin will just be looking to round out a 4th place finish there. I think the top 3, barring any incidents, is decided. Whether they finish in the order they're currently in, we're yet to see. Whether there'll be some last lap drama, a couple of spins, a couple of spills, we'll wait and see. So, actually, a battle that is probably about to form amongst all the fighting between Boudou and Martin. Olivier has caught up to Charlie Martin. He is currently sitting 2 seconds behind Charlie, just coming into turn 10. Boudou has yielded and is letting the battle for position commence. Okay, right under the rear wing of that Bentley. This is last minute drama for the pair. Charlie Martin's going to be doing everything in her power to keep Dominic behind her. But the Hurricane just making himself as big as possible in those mirrors, trying to look for a mistake. Of course, he may not know, but Charlie did have a slight moment when I believe it was AJ Jones behind her earlier. But
Dominic is also a very experienced driver, not just on sim racing, but also in real life competing and running with his father back in St. Vincent. So this is going to be for bragging rights here.
This is, in fact, Dominic has managed to make the move into turn 1. Dominic did just pull alongside going down the straight and managed to dispatch Martin with relative ease there. The straight line speed of the Hurricane perhaps just aided by the toe of the Bentley there. Not too many dramas in that overtake, but a position lost for Charlie Martin there, a position gained for Dominic Olivier. Now Dominic's just got to see it through now. So Daniel Christo has started his last lap of the race, 25 seconds left. He's currently going around turn 3. It's looking likely Daniel's going to win. So he's just got to see it through. Make sure he doesn't take his eye off the ball. Doesn't start thinking he's playing a game of tennis. And just, see it through.
Very opportunistic, and he's managed to make the stop work and also get past Patterson on track as well to then claim a pretty commanding victory. So running on board with him is run to the finish here at round 6 of the CSM Championship, powered by turn 1.
So Christo just coming round now. He, as Dom rightly said, took advantage. He was opportunistic with it. Perhaps Corbin perhaps stayed out a little too long on his tyres. Christo managed to outdo Patterson in their pit stop battle, and has done everything right. He's not really put a foot wrong, even from the start of the race. Before we had a couple of dropouts, he was with the big boys fighting it up top. As Christo makes his way through the last chicane, he's just about to round the final corner of round 6 CSM Championship at Barcelona, and Daniel Christo wins at Barcelona. That is a very commanding win for the 99 McLaren 720S. Jadani Patterson comes across in second place, the 79 Hurricane GT3. Grant Willamot also coming over the line in third place. That rounds out the podium. A very good drive from all 3 of those drivers. Grant perhaps feeling he might have done slightly better. He did start in second place, having dropped the 1 position there. So also coming across the line, number 531 of Michael Somnesia, finishing in 16th place. In 5th place for the GT4s. Chris Corbin comes across the line in his BMW. In 4th place. Now Jamal Padu has just picked up a drive-through penalty on the final corner. So he has had 30 seconds added to his race time because he could not complete the drive-through penalty. So he's crossed the line in 5th place. Havard Rolfsson has crossed it in 6th. but I believe Rolfson
What's the gap?
fifth place.
Is the gap to AJ Jones though? Is AJ Jones a lap down, or is he close enough?
That is a very interesting question. So Jamal's lost the place to Rolfson, but is AJ close enough? Our timing screens do not currently show us. He is 27 seconds behind Rolfson, so no, AJ Jones is just outside of Jamal's 30-second penalty. In fact, Omar Badu has also got a drive-through penalty on the last lap, on the last corner. That is astonishing. That is absolutely astonishing.
That is very unusual. I wonder if that is server related. We need to check with our stewards at the park for me after the race.
The track limits. Of course, pushing very hard the drivers. Their last lap, everyone's just trying as hard as possible to catch the guys in front. He probably would have seen things developing in front, just pushed as hard as possible and just chanced it a bit too much. But there is your order. There is how things finished. Just look at the GT4s. To win the GT4 category was Konstantinidis, the number 3 Aston Martin. Second place, Kirk Heath didn't manage to replicate his win from last time out. And then in third place, Damien Ao did manage to replicate his third place from last time. Fourth place, Javon Codrington in his Porsche Cayman, then Michael Shonizia and May then as well in 335 Porsche Cayman. Addison, of course, did disconnect, as did Oscar Sandberg, Damien Eward and Wilhelm Weirich. They unfortunately did not make the end of the race. But there you have it. Please do make sure to stick around. Myself and Dominic Linton will be asking the drivers a few questions, getting their immediate thoughts on their race. That was very exciting, don't you think, Dom?
That was very, very exciting. If you had asked me to call it at the beginning of the race, I would not have even thought that we'd see Christo and Wilma on the podium with Wilhelm Weirich and Oscar Sandberg being the turn 1 drivers to watch out for. So that has been a very exciting race. The race leader changed so many times. This has been very, very interesting. Although the field spread out quite a bit, there was one point where there was about 6 drivers that could have had a shot for the win here today. You don't really see that very often in a GT3 category, don't you, Chris?
No, it usually is boiling down to the 2 at the front, but up to about 20 minutes through that race, when everyone finished their pit stops, it really could have been anyone. So as the drivers just pull into the pit lane, they'll all dive into the debriefing room. And Dom, do you think you're going to take the GT3 guys? Do you think you can ask them a few questions?
Yes, I will like to hear from Johnny Patterson on his pit stop strategy and handing the race to Daniel Christo, but most importantly, I want to hear from the GT4 grid and Magic Stavros. How on earth has he managed to find the pace in a GT4 car, pull almost a lap out on Kirk Heath? That is an incredible drive. On an autograph now.
Certainly is. So it's going to be a small 10-second interlude while we go join the drivers, so bear with us and we'll be with you very shortly.
Okay.
So, well done everyone. That was a very entertaining race. There was a bit of a calamitous start for some, but it worked out. Oh, I was very entertained watching that. Well done everyone. I believe Dominic will kick off the questions, if he can hear me.
Hey there, everyone. The team here from CSM are just parked from me with the drivers at the end of that. I want to go to the GT4 grid before we get back up to the GT3s. Magic Stavros, that drive you put down today, my friend, I want an autograph. That was an absolute masterclass, pulling almost a lap ahead of Kurt Heath. Let's talk us through your strategy for this race today.
Hello everyone. Well, it was my first race, so I put a lot of laps. to learn both the truck and the car. I have never driven the GT4s before. Kirk at the start of the race was putting a very good fight. I couldn't pass him for about 20 minutes, I think. But after I passed him, and especially after the pit stop, he was kept the same pace where I could push a little bit more. So it's just getting longer and longer the distance between us.
A very, very masterclass drive. There was at one point very, very early on where you were a second quicker than the next closest GT4 car, and that was only about 15 minutes in, so well done to you. Let's just move over to Kirk Heath. Had it early on, you had it in the bag, pulling away from the others, knocking some laps in, and then the pace just started to fall away. Was it an issue with the tyres? Can you just walk us through that?
I've not had that much practice here, so I think it was just I'm still adapting to the BMW and track combinations. So I think it was more than anything, it was just the fact that I couldn't keep a consistent pace. As Polo Man said, sorry, I forgot his full name. I had the upper hand to start with, like I could just place the car in the right place, and then I knew where the BMW was stronger compared to the Aston, so I could keep behind me and give it a good fight. But yeah, he just had more consistent pace, and every time I was making just a little bit mistakes here and there and going too deep, and then that was it. He was right behind me. So in the end, I just thought, you know, it's a long race. Don't try and win it quick. So I just got my head down and just tried to get a rhythm. So I just gave up the fight, really, just let him crack on, and then just tried to see if I could just maintain a podium. So I'm still happy with that. But yeah, he's just that was a master drive from him. So thumbs up to him.
It's great to see the camaraderie between the guys here, and also another one of the BMW drivers, Dami Ayo, coming up in third in the GT4s. Walk us through your race today.
It was okay qualifying. Qualifying third. I lost a bunch of positions at the start, and Somnesia gave me a nice run for my money, so I decided to pit early, and somehow we got stop and go 30 for probably speeding the pit lane, and after that, after the pit stops, I was just trying to stay out of the way of the GT3s, and possibly P1 was way ahead. Great drive, P1 and P2. I have to find some more pace somewhere to give you a bit more of a run, but I'm happy with that.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the GT4 grid here today from round 6 at Barcelona. Chris, do you want to take the GT3s?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Daniel Christo. Well done, Daniel. A very good win there. It was, for a lot of it, we were umming and ahhing in the commentary box of who would come out on top. Did you always feel you could win this race?
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
No, I didn't think I could win this race, to be honest. I'm new to you guys, and I was just there for a bit of fun. What can I say? I'm just really chuffed about the win, really. Wasn't expecting it. Qualifying weren't too bad. I probably had a few more attempts in my locker, but really draw it out. As far as the race goes, I found myself sort of gained a few positions due to a little incident, I believe, just ahead. And then I think I was behind Patterson for quite a bit. We had similar pace, so I said to myself, I'll just follow him in the pits and just let the mechanics sort it out as to who would come out ahead of this one here. So once he had a couple of oversteer moments, I thought he was going to pit then, so he didn't. I got in front then and pulled a bit of a gap, dived in the pits, and then when I come out, I had sort of about 5-6 seconds, and then from there, it was just about keeping it on the road and bringing it home.
That sounds like it was a very mature drive to watch. No real errors on your part and just capitalising on others.
Yeah, just from the beginning, just those places that I picked up. Not sure who was in the BM. I had a sort of a good ding-dong with him for a while. Managed to get past. And I think he dived in the pits. And then, it was just about concentration today, really. Once I found myself in those positions, it was just head down and just focus on the lap time.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and well done on the win. I'll go now to Jelani Patterson. Jelani, same question to you, really. Do you think you could have done better? Do you think that should have been you on the top step?
Without a doubt, but this is how racing is sometimes. I was giving it my all. Like you said, I had a few oversteer moments, and that was P1 right there. And went in a few laps after him, and I lost maybe 5, 6 seconds in the pits. But I gave it my all, but just wasn't up to it. But all in all, still happy with second place. Good result for me. I'll take it.
Just glad to hear the positivity coming from second place. And then moving on to third, Grant. Third place, a drop from second place of the last round. But are you happy with your performance?
Don't like to be that guy, but not really. Too many incidents with other cars.
Green light, green light. Go, go, go.
Crashed twice with other GT3 cars, once with a GT4 car. But I guess it's just one of those things that happens. But then I did spin myself under no pressure at all. I lost 5-6 seconds, which is the one which hurts the most. I knew the pace here was really good. I'd been doing a lot of practice around this track the last few days with Oscar and Willem in the Bentley. So I only really had to get used to a different car, that was all. Was pushing like mad at the end there, trying to catch P2. But I'd completely destroyed the tyres on the left-hand side of the car. There was nothing left at the end. The pace was really good, though, up until about the last 10 minutes. Low 44s. I think I got fastest lap of the race, or I hope I got fastest lap of the race. The win was there, but just too many errors.
I can confirm you did get fastest lap. It was a 1:44.1, so 4 tenths, I should say, not 4 seconds, 4 tenths faster than Olivier, I believe. So well done for that. An extra point for yourself. But looking forward to the next round, you're hoping to go a couple places better, go for that top step.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying because Catalonia is a really good track for me. I don't know how over the last 10 years on various games and sims how many laps I've done around this track. Thousands and thousands. So I really enjoy it. And I say, even though I had 4 incidents in the first stint and the tyres were pretty cooked, the pace was still really fast. Maybe I should have stayed out a little bit longer. But yeah, by the end, that was the best I could get.
Just sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. But
Yeah, that's
thank
right.
you very much for that. Thank you to all the drivers for taking part. I certainly enjoyed commentating it. Dom, did you?
Yes, it was interesting being back in the commentary booth after a couple of rounds out. The pace has definitely picked up. Some new names that I've joined here today with Christo and Willamot, and they've completely blown the championship wide open. So next round is going to be very, very epic.
Well, you can join us for the next round. It will be next Sunday, same time. Admittedly, the track does escape me, but I'm sure you'll be able to see it all on our social media feeds. Make sure to follow them. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and this will be bye-bye for now from us. So with that, bye-bye.